have an unidentified flying object.
I'm Jack Oswald, and you're listening.
This is Hudson Hamane, and you're listening to...
I'm Richard C. Hoagland, and you're listening to...
I'm Art Bell, and you're listening to Dr. J Radio Live.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Greetings and welcome back to another episode of Dr. J Radio Live. Of course, we have an awesome show lined up for you. Just to let you know, of course, we are broadcasting from Los Angeles, where it happens to be a little past 7 p.m. Pacific time. For those of you on the East Coast, such as my sound engineer, it is 10 p.m. Eastern time. And, of course, where my co-host is live in London, 3 a.m. Greenwich Mean Time. Use those 3 time zones and figure out where you are at. And of course, you can join us live unless you catch this show on the multiple repeats on the multiple networks. Now, last night we had a Navy SEAL who was talking about some amazing information. Not too long ago, you heard from another governor. As a matter of fact, the only governor who happened to endorse Hillary Clinton, and the endorsement was made on the show before he went on to CNN and Fox and all those. That was, of course, the one and only Governor Dukakis. We also had Senator Mike Gravel early this year predict that Bernie Sanders would be the clear winner. Now, as you saw, of course, those of you who are living in the United States, if you saw the conventions, the Republican National Convention and the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, you could see Bernie's face when he literally gave up his delegates for Hillary Clinton. So essentially, all these people back Trump, but yet for some reason the polls that I'm seeing are very different. Nonetheless, the reason why I wanted to mention that is we have another Navy SEAL, another actor. We've had several actors on the show. We've also had reality stars on the show. This is our first time we're having a professional wrestler and another governor. But this is all wrapped into one. The one and only Governor Jesse Ventura. Governor, welcome back.
Thank you. Great to be back. And you might state a complete independent who has never been a Republican or Democrat and has never ran as a Republican or Democrat. I am the ultimate independent.
I really think you should have run for POTUS because I think so many more people would have backed you instead of Donald Trump.
Well, I gave it very serious consideration. The Libertarian Party invited me to their convention twice. One of the things that held me back is I don't desire to be part of any political party. And apparently, pretty much you got to be if you're going to make a run at an office. And second of all was I gave it hard thought, and I was up for running. I was up for attempting to get into the fixed election because they don't allow third parties in the debates.
Yes, that's right.
And I was up for all of that, but I couldn't go all in on the 4 years of doing the job. And I felt that if I couldn't be 100%, committed, that not only am I cheating myself, but I'm cheating everyone who would have voted for me. And I couldn't reach that 100%, so I passed on it.
I'm glad you mentioned the fact that third-party candidates are not in the debates because the other two candidates that are not Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump were not allowed in the debate because they didn't have a certain number of percentage points. So we're ultimately left with establishment parties.
Let me interject, too, and state that, this 15% they came up with, let's remember the Federal Debate Commission is completely partisan Democrats and Republicans. That's what it's made up of. It actually replaced the National League of Women Voters after Perot ran in 92 and got 20% of the vote. They then took it away from the National League of Women Voters and they formed this Federal Debate Commission, which is a fix. Because I say that because they come up with this arbitrary number of 15%. Well, no independent or third-party candidate can achieve that, and I'll tell you why. Because mainstream media won't give them equal coverage. They might get a 0.5% of the 99.5% coverage that's given to the Democrats and Republicans. So it's a completely warped, slanted, fixed system. Now, how they audit, in fact, I'll use myself as an example. When I ran for governor of Minnesota at what we call Labor Day, which is the first weekend in September, I was polling only 9%. I was allowed in the debates. 60 days later, I was the 38th governor of Minnesota. So I proved you can go from single digits to winning an election in 60 days. And they're not going to allow that to happen. It's an unlevel, it's cheating, it's an unlevel playing field. Now, how they ought to do it, the criteria should be how many states you will be on the ballot. In that case, Governor Johnson of the Libertarians, he's on the ballot in all 50 states. I believe Dr.
Yes.
Stein of the Green
Jill
Party.
Stein.
Yeah. Don't quote me, but I think she's about 44 states.
They are, yeah.
Yeah, in that area. Well, that should qualify them. Because if they were able to debate and win those states with the corrupt electoral college, and I think that's corrupt too, they would win. I'll tell you what I'm hoping. Here's what I'm hoping happens. My best dreams. I'm hoping Governor Johnson can win his home state of New Mexico and maybe somehow win another state or two. Then I'm hoping Clinton and Trump split the electorals and neither one reaches the magic number so that in the end we don't have a president.
I would like for that to happen.
Oh, would I love for that to happen, because then, maybe then, we could remember the election of 2016 as the one that would get rid of the Electoral College and go to a complete popular vote, which is what it should be.
Yes. Even Dukakis said that he'd rather have popular vote because he won by a couple million, if not 2 to 3 million, somewhere in that range, in popular vote, but lost in the Electoral College. And speaking,
the thing is, president is the only election where you can get the most votes and lose.
Correct.
Now that's asinine.
It's
a governor,
stupid.
A congressman, a senator, anybody else, you get the most votes, you win.
Popular, exactly.
Yeah, exactly. And this system was set up. One of the reasons, and it's really laughable today, one of the reasons they had the electoral was they had no way in the 13 colonies of getting the word to Washington, so that's why they sent delegates on horseback. Well, when's the last time anybody went on horseback to Washington, D.C.?
About 150 years ago or so, right around the Civil War, if that.
Yeah, probably back then.
Yeah.
And so
Lincoln.
It's antiquated, it's ridiculous, it's an elitist system, and it needs to be gotten rid of. And maybe somehow that could be the positive to come out of this election. I'm not holding my breath, but that's what I would hope would happen.
Even former Senator Mike Gravel, who served for, I believe, 5 terms. If it wasn't, it was 4. But I know he spent about 50 years in politics, starting with local city council. Then, of course, he went to state assembly, then U.S. congressman, and then U.S. senator as a libertarian. He said that election rigging has gone back to literally George Washington, 1789. That's how far back this corruption has gone of these two parties. And like you said, if you're not a Republican or a Democrat, then you're not going to get that $1 billion to fund you.
Well, it's also because the third parties don't go get the dirty money.
Yes.
See, the two parties have created a system, but you can't take it back to George Washington because the Republicans didn't exist back then.
Correct. But
But anyway, though, they've created a system of bribery.
Yes, that's right.
And if you do that in the private sector, of course, you go to jail.
Yes, you do.
But in the public sector or the public arena, it's perfectly fine.
It's allowed, and that's the rules of the game. That's why I would love it, like you said, for a scenario such as Clinton or Trump do not reach the required delegates, and then we don't have a president. That would be great.
Well, you'd get a president. Congress would then elect the president.
Yeah, that's the problem. Is they're all elected too.
Well, but that would
that's
be
better.
a problem because there would be such outrage over whichever way Congress went, and especially if they looked at it from the popular vote. Whoever would get the popular vote then ought to be the one who gets voted in. Is the way you would logically, I think, look at it.
Well, I would think
you would then turn to the popular vote and say, okay, which one of these two people, since they didn't reach the delegate level, which one got the most popular vote? And that would be the way I would hope Congress would go then, and then that in turn could lead to getting rid of the whole electoral college, which I agree with.
I absolutely agree with you this way. Now, this is going to sound really bad, but if anyone's watched that new show, Designated Survivor, where they have two designated survivors during the State of the Union and everything just goes kabootz, then you have to start over. The point is something needs to change. It's really disgusting what is happening. Now, one thing...
Well, and who's responsible for that? We the people are.
Yes, by giving in so much.
We are responsible because we haven't been vigilant citizens. We haven't spoken out. We haven't let our will be known. And now I'm going to tie it into why I'm talking to you, the writing of my book, The Marijuana Manifesto. That could be the issue that could bring America back to being where the people are in power, because right now the federal government still considers marijuana a class
Schedule
1 narcotic with heroin and all that.
That's right.
And over half of the people have voted they want it fully approved and legal. Well, they're doing it state by state, and this could be the issue where the people say to the federal government, wait a minute, we're in charge, you're not our parents, we want this legal, and you're going to do it. And that's why it's a motivating issue that goes beyond the fact of marijuana being a tremendous medical plant, as well as everything else you can do with it, of clothing, biodiesel fuel,
everything.
The list goes on and on.
To toothpaste, like you said, clothing, shoes, and DuPont, I read, was the company that was fighting to have marijuana banned. And it's ironic. I'm glad you mentioned about heroin.
It isn't DuPont necessarily. It's not DuPont. It's all of them. It's the whole pharmaceutical industry. They don't want anyone to have marijuana. And it comes down to the basic concept of follow the money. The major problem is you could grow it yourself if they legalize it. It's a plant. It grows like tomatoes in the backyard.
Easy.
My mother used to grow a patch of tomatoes every year, and we lived in the inner city, and we'd eat fresh tomatoes. Well, you could do the same thing with marijuana. And the thing is, then the government can't tax it, and Pharma can't control it.
But
or corporate, there's no corporate control.
Even though there are several states, including where I live, where it's legal medicinally, there are the other three states, Colorado, Oregon, and Washington, that have it for recreational use. What has it done?
It's still not fully legal.
Correct. But the point...
I'll explain why.
Okay.
Even in Colorado right now, it is not fully legal.
But
Here's
the
why.
economy for Colorado has shot up.
Wait a minute. All of that has happened, but here's why it's still not fully legal. If I went to Colorado today, I could buy as much tobacco as my car would hold. I could buy as much alcohol or booze as I could fill my car up with. But yet I could only buy, I believe it's a half an ounce of marijuana
in
legally.
California, it's 1 ounce, but people just go from...
Whatever, but the point of the matter is the fact that on the other two substances, you could buy and fill up your entire car.
That's right, kilos.
But yet with this, you're not allowed to. So you still don't have complete freedom, because with complete freedom, you should be able to buy as much as you would desire to buy and want to buy.
Prior to 96, before California legalized it for medicinal use, I recall that they introduced something to help the cancer patients for nausea. Marinol, synthetic THC. That is something that people can fill at CVS, Rite Aid, any store, Walmart if you needed to. The point is, it's Big Pharma who's collecting the money. And when it first came out and was brand name, it's generic now, it was literally about $45 a pill. So what do you think of the fact that Big Pharma was the ones, the people, the organizations that were literally making the money off of something that anybody can grow in any state?
Well, that's the way they want to set it up. That's why they fight legalization, because they'll be fine if the big corporate pharmaceutical companies can control it and make all the profit from it. Then you would see it legalized. They've already set it up for that. They've already given patents to Big Pharma and all that when it happens. But see, they'll fight on the fact that they don't want people to be able to get it free. See, people need to understand a simple concept. If the government could tax you for the air you breathe, they would do it in some manner.
That's right. That's right.
You get my point. And so anything that they can't tax, they will make illegal. I'll give you a great case in point, prostitution. Okay? 2 consenting adults could meet on a street corner and have all the consensual sex they desire, and as long as both are consenting, there's nothing against the law about that. They can be perfect strangers. Yet, if there was an exchange of money, then all of a sudden it becomes illegal. Follow me?
Correct.
So the government wants and needs to be the pimp in layman's terms. And that's the reason they don't want full legalization of marijuana, is because poor people could have access to it. They wouldn't have to pay Big Pharma. I mean, I was outraged when I saw this latest deal for the poor people that are allergic to bee stings, and they used to have those shots for $20, and Pharma's now raised them up to $500. I mean, a 400% raise in the price. I think it's wrong when you allow corporate profits to take place at the expense of people's health.
Agreed. And you know what's something so ironic that people know, but definitely the entire United States does not know, is that, yes, this is illegal. Schedule 1, higher than Oxycontin. Even cocaine is still Schedule 2. And marijuana is Schedule 1. You have doctors always talking about the benefits that you can get from it. Yet in D.C., the suburbs, it is legal. You can go to a medicinal shop and buy half ounce, maybe an ounce, and smoke all you want in the privacy of your home. Yet you bring that into the White House, if tours aren't there anymore, but if they were, you're all of a sudden committing a felony, a serious felony.
Yeah, well, the laws are ridiculous on it, and it's the only thing that they allow law enforcement to classify. Now, why is it the DEA, the Drug Enforcement Agency, gets to make the determining factor on where marijuana stands? They have such a big conflict of interest, it's ridiculous. No other place do we allow law enforcement to make the laws. The laws are to be made by legislators, people you elect, not a law enforcement agency. But see, they push it off that way because the people elected, the Democrats and Republicans, are all a bunch of cowards, and they won't take stands on things. And, like Hillary Clinton now, they ask her about marijuana and legalization, and she gives the standard chicken crap answer that they all do. Oh, well, we need more testing.
That's right.
No, we don't.
BS.
They have a university in Israel that we've been funding for decades. The doctor over there is the expert. He's already stated it would help the traumatic head injuries in the National Football League. He said it would help post-traumatic stress from soldiers coming home from these ridiculous wars in the Middle East. And if you read my intro written by Mr. Steve Cubby. That alone should convince everyone. Excuse me, here's a guy who was given 5 years to live. He was dying with non-curable adrenal cancer.
Mm-hmm.
They gave him a 5-year death sentence. There was nothing they could do for him. That was 35 years ago.
And he's
He
still
went on
living,
heavy-
30 years past the time they said he would die.
Exactly. He's lived 30 years past that. He was the guy who first got medicinal marijuana passed in California in 96. He spearheaded it. So he became a target of the DEA after that, because remember, the feds haven't legalized it.
Correct.
It's still illegal there. Well, they
Correct.
targeted Steve, raided his home where he was legally growing, according to the state of California, for himself. It was keeping him alive.
Yet
And doctors have attributed the only reason he is alive today is because of cannabis. It shrunk down the tumor, it turned it benign, it put it into recession, and he's lived for 30 years now. Well, they raided his house, stuck him in prison. He couldn't get his marijuana. He lost 22 pounds, and the cancer started coming back, and they were killing him. Until finally somebody prevailed, and I forget how, but they got him released. He went back on the cannabis, and he's still alive today, but I think he lives in Canada now.
And the sad part is Big Pharma is profiting so much because they prescribe cancer patients thousands of pills a month, which cost up to $10,000 or more, yet that's Schedule 2. It's allowed under doctor supervision, but this isn't. And here's a question from a caller who's been writing for quite some time, so I have to ask
Sure.
it. This is Tim in Portland. He wants to know how Minnesota went from conservative to liberal.
Well, conservative to liberal, Minnesota's always been mostly liberal. If you notice that Minnesota hasn't voted for a Republican for president, I think, in 40 years.
Yeah,
I think you'd have to go back to Nixon maybe in 72.
Interesting. Well, Tim out there.
So, and Minnesota has two liberal senators right now, Al Franken and Amy Klobuchar. They're both Democrats. They have a Democrat governor. I wouldn't call Minnesota conservative at all. Minnesota is kind of a roll of the dice. They're heavily independent. That's how come I won. But if they're made to choose between Republican or Democrat, generally they seem to lean liberal, but occasionally a conservative will win them over.
Yes, and as Tim wrote, thanks, Tim, you're very, very welcome. I found a document. I have a friend. She owns one of the oldest head shops here in Los Angeles. It's called Lion's Lair. It's been open since the early 70s. And she's starting a museum of every document she can find or photograph of people from the early movement. She showed me the proof in the pudding, literally. It is a letter written to the Senate by the American Medical Association in the late 20s saying that marijuana is found to be not harmful at all and has several medical benefits. And what happens after that? Then we have, I believe is it Anslinger?
Yeah, Harry Anslinger, but the other real villain was William Randolph Hearst.
Yes, that's right.
He owned 26 newspapers. He owned thousands of acres of timberland up in Montana and all that. And he wanted, in the spirit of true capitalism, rather than competing, which is what capitalism is supposed to be, he used his power to buy off the politicians in Washington, and in the late 30s they declared marijuana illegal, and that's when it became illegal. And then he used his 26 newspapers to bastardize marijuana, and he turned it into the devil weed of people with color. Anyone, be you Mexican or African American, you got just waylaid back then in his 26 newspapers where they said that's what makes these people like they are, is the devil weed marijuana, and he used total racism to sell it to the then predominantly, well, completely American-run white government in the late 1930s. And so that's why it was declared illegal, and it was put on the same level as heroin and all that. And I'll just interject this for people today. We just lost our prince here in Minnesota, and if had he been smoking pot, he'd still be alive. But because he was using pharmaceutical opiates, he's now dead.
Yes, and those are a way to enslave you, literally, because once you're hooked, you will do whatever it takes for them or the government to give it to you. So essentially, by converting everybody into an opiate addict, the United States and Big Pharma are not only making boatloads of money, they are creating a slave race that will do anything they want. They'll say, you want your Oxycontin or your Dilaudid? Here, put on boots and take this M16 and go over there somewhere, Afghanistan, whoever enemy we choose, and we will give you whatever you want daily. I mean, it's pathetic, and I really fear that.
Are you saying that they put our soldiers on drugs and send them over there?
No, I'm saying that if in the near future I could see that happening because...
I don't think so, because you wouldn't be a very good fighting force if you were on opiates.
It's true.
Trust me.
Well,
when I served my time, I was on nothing, because you need a clear head, you need to be able to think, and you need to be able to operate.
And not be nodding out. Alexander the Great, when he was having his, conquests, what he would do is he would keep taking the opiate plant, the poppy, further and further east until it got to Afghanistan. And because that was really brutal warfare, you're talking about swords and bows and arrows and up and close, blood everywhere. He would feed it to everybody because a few things. First of all, the people that were harmed and were going to die peacefully, smiling in their sleep. The people that were slightly harmed or not harmed would be sleeping peacefully and not hearing the noises of the people who are dying and screaming and moaning. And
I think we're in Afghanistan for a different reason.
Oh, now, yeah. The Taliban eradicated most of it, 95% of it.
No. We're there for the lithium.
Oh, I didn't think about that. But I do know that the Taliban did a great job in eradicating opium. And since we went there in 2001, I believe,
2001, 2002.
It is shot up 20%, 20 times.
It put them back in business. The Taliban had knocked them out of business, and we had our first recession, if you remember.
Yes.
Because I don't think the laundered money was getting through to the international banks. It dried up, and that caused the first mild recession in 2002. And but the thing, we're in Afghanistan, I believe, because I saw it in a newspaper article shortly after we entered into there. I could never figure out why the Russians went in there. I was always mystified what the Russians needed to go into Afghanistan for, until I found out that it's extremely mineral rich, and they about a month after we were in there was a small article in the back pages of a newspaper which made it clear to me. They said the largest vein of lithium in the world was discovered there. And what is lithium used for? Well, every battery, every cell phone, every computer battery. Lithium is probably way more valuable than gold ever would be today.
Yes, lithium-ion batteries are by far the strongest we can get. I never ever thought about that.
But apparently they blow up and burn, though, too, huh?
That, just like the Samsung, S7, the Galaxy, the new one, that they're telling people who are flying on flights, please turn it off.
Did you see the thing today?
Yes.
The new replacement one just blew up.
Unbelievable. Yes, because they're binding...
apparently on some Southwest flight. It caused them to evacuate the plane because it filled up with smoke, and it was one of the replacement ones. So apparently they haven't fixed it yet.
which is really pathetic if you think about it, because this is supposed to be cleaned up. They've already lost billions of dollars. So if this is a replacement, then why the heck is it still blowing up? I think because we're buying cheap crap Chinese parts, right?
I don't know. I'm
Yeah.
not in that business. I couldn't speculate. I've never owned a cell phone, so asking me about cell phones is a worthless question.
I would have to agree with that, because when I spoke to your son, Tyrell Ventura, he said you're not going to find him on a cell phone. That's how he got it. He gave me your publicist's name. Obviously, I know Sean Stone.
I've never owned one, and I don't plan on owning one.
Good.
I don't need it. I understand their importance, and I understand why people have them, because they're in positions where they need instant communication. But it was kind of funny, because I was doing a book tour in New York, and they stick you in, quote, the green room to wait, and there were probably 10 people in the green room, and I looked around the room, and for the entire time we were there, they were all manipulating and doing things with cell phones except me. I was the only person in the room
that didn't
have a cell phone out.
Well, you're actually smart. Look at all this crap, these radio waves that are going around.
I don't know if I'm smart or not, but I believe in evolution, and I'll be gone, so I'll never see the results of it. But it's going to be interesting to see how man evolves now with the introduction of these screens, where they're looking at them literally
all day,
virtually all their waking moments of the day.
Facebook,
they're looking at a screen.
Instagram. You're absolutely right. It's the monster's gone digital. I saw an amazing movie, and it reminded me his bank manager got robbed. The bank was robbed. And when the detective, it was Woody Harrelson, came in and spoke to the bank manager, he says, how did they have pictures of my home, my wife and daughters and their school? And he said, be careful what you Google Insta tweet face, And I just thought that was such a great line. Now, let me ask you this.
And for me, too, it's a case, if you've got a cell phone, they can track you.
Oh, absolutely.
And I just don't desire to give them the opportunity to be able to do it so easily.
Just like the NSA, of course, spends billions of dollars a year to track it. See, a lot of people think there's not 3.5 billion people in the world listening to the other 3.5 billion. No, it's not. It's supercomputers that translate what you say into text, cross-check it with all your text messages, Facebook, emails, and all your friends. And that's how they create patterns and profiles for you. It's disgusting. Now, let me go back to your book, Jesse Ventura's Marijuana Manifesto. In California, we had medical marijuana passed in 1996. Now, how far back does you advocating for it? Because when you were governor in Minnesota back in 98, what happened, and also what led you to write this book now as opposed to then?
Well, I tried to get it legalized when I became governor of Minnesota, but it was apparently too far-fetched for the Democrats and Republicans. See, I had nobody there. And so people need to understand, as a governor, you can't pass a law. The only people that can pass laws are the legislators. And so you can veto them, and you have that power.
Checks
and
and
you can
balances.
carry an agenda, and you do the budget and all that. But you can't pass a law. Well, I couldn't even get anybody to carry the bill over there and have a floor discussion on it. That's how ahead of the 8 ball I was. You notice when an independent comes in, we do things 10 to 15 years ahead of the Democrats and Republicans, if people would catch on to that. I'll give you another example. Guess who went to Havana, Cuba back in 2002, met with Castro, and yet there's not a word said about it when they had this historic re-entry of Cuba and the U.S.
Obama, right?
No, me.
Really?
I went to Cuba in 2002 over the objections of the Bush administration. I met with Fidel Castro, and I was down there for a week.
Really?
And yet there's no press that the independent governor of Minnesota was 15 years or 12, 14 years ahead of where the Democrats and Republicans are today.
What I like about pictures and videos of modern day Havana, you will literally see cars from the 50s and 60s, American cars, because they still make parts for them, and they look great.
No, they don't. They probably have a Russian engine in it.
Oh, yeah, but still, I'll go down there.
They weren't allowed to get anything. Did you know when I went there, the U.S. government suspended my wife's passport so she could not accompany me?
No. Are you kidding me? Jeez. Well, that just goes to show.
And why? Why would they do that? Why would they suspend her passport so she couldn't go? Well, logic tells you whenever a man goes on a business trip and takes his wife tends to go shopping, right?
Correct.
Well, they don't want any of our money spent in Cuba.
Yet, when the embargo was enacted, what happened? President Kennedy bought as many cigars as he could buy from Cuba so he can have for his short life.
That's just a little that I don't care about that. The point of the matter is that the ironic thing is that Cuba actually uses our money.
Yes, that's right.
You know, on the black market down there, it's our money, United States money, that's exchanged. Like if you were going to Cuba from Mexico or Canada or other places that allowed travel there at the time, they would tell you to bring United States money.
Yes.
How ridiculous is that? That they're using our money on their own black market, and we're embargoing them.
Instead of the Cuban pesos. That is weird.
It's
disgusting.
laughable.
Laughable, exactly. We have questions coming in, and since this is a short time, I didn't want to take them all. But I'm going to turn it over to SoCal Dan, who goes by @DonDanL, to tell us some of the highlights in the chat rooms.
Hi, Governor.
Okay.
Thanks for taking my question. This is actually coming from Peter Scott, who is texting from Needles, California. He asks, with California poised to legalize marijuana in November, can electronic voting machines be trusted?
No, they cannot. Absolutely not. That's one thing. They can be electronic voting machines can be hacked into like any other computer. One thing great about Minnesota, we still use the ballots where you have to darken in the spot. And let me put it to you in layman's terms. Would you go to an ATF machine that didn't offer you a receipt?
No. Really?
Okay. No, you wouldn't. So why would you vote on a machine where you don't even know when you push that electronic button, you have no way of knowing whether it was recorded for your candidate or not? You don't get no receipt. And see, that's why sometimes staying old-fashioned is better. And in the case of voting, in Minnesota, we can hand count every vote if we have to. And lately we've had some very close elections that were hand counted, and so we knew we were correct. But with electronic voting machines, I would not trust them because they can be hacked, and that's where voter fraud will come in. When they talk about voter fraud, they act like there's groups of organized crime out there rounding up people and having them go to polls illegally. Well, that's laughable. We did a big study in Minnesota and found there were like 3 cases of voter fraud in the last 10 years, something ridiculous like that. But where the voter fraud will come in is on these electronic voting machines where you can fraud masses amount. Like one example, they could hack the machine and make it to where one candidate starts with a negative number.
Yes,
I know. They have to get so many votes before it actually starts counting it as a positive vote.
It's absolutely disgusting, and like you said, rigged, as former Senator Mike Gravel, who spent 50 years in politics, and the establishment was able to tell us. Now, let's go turn it over to our international chat rooms, which are, I know there's over 30 chat rooms. So, Johnny, have you been monitoring them?
Indeed, I have. I've got a relevant one here from Justin in Sydney, Australia, on Facebook, and she's asking, is it not true that the reason people can't go to Cuba is that they have a better medical system, a free medical system like the UK?
And that's why they can't go there? No, I've never heard that as given a reason. I'm ignorant on that. I've never heard anything like that. It's more, to me, it's more the case of, I could never figure it out at first. I thought, now, Cuba's communist, and so is China. Yet we trade with China, and we don't Cuba. And that was the dilemma. And then it finally came clear to me, it's because China fully accepts our corporations. Castro kicked out the corporations. See, it all comes down to corporate power. The United States is fascist today. I've gotten in trouble for saying that, but I refer to us as the fascist states of America because the corporations are running everything. And that's what the basic definition of fascism is. And that to me was the major thing. Castro kicked out the corporations. He kicked out organized crime and all of that. And where China welcomes our corporations. So it all comes down to whether you support the United States corporations, and war is also determined that way here. If you read General Smedley Butler's War is a Racket book.
I'm looking at these questions that are popping up here from both domestic and international chat rooms, and I see one that's relevant. So I'm going to let Johnny, who takes care of the international chat, to go ahead and ask it. Go ahead, Johnny.
Okay, this one comes in from Peter in Cambodia. He's a regular listener, and he asks, in your SEAL days, did you ever come across giants in caves in Kandahar being smoked out? There's a video of a big smoke group leaving a cave from Kandahar, and it's interesting because we had a SEAL one a couple of weeks back who talked about that exactly, where he had a redhead giant that they, in their group, had to kill and bring back to America. Have you ever heard of this story?
Explain that to me. That one flew right over my head. Slow that down and tell me, what are you talking about?
I could actually give you the background. Several months ago, we had a listener who was from the DA, and I know this because he sent me his resume, and I followed up with every federal agency he worked for. So we had a guest, and they ended up talking, and somehow they exchanged information, or I think the guest told the listener to go to his website. And so they released another series in the Watcher series. A few of them were on Sci-Fi, most are completely independent. They talked about a city, I forget the name, Kandahar maybe, in Afghanistan, 2003, where they were told, instead of doing double taps, shoot above. And I guess that was meant to shoot higher than normal and shoot headshots only. And they said this 12-foot 12-foot tall or 9-foot tall, 1,200-pound beast came out with a sort of a sword and a spear and decimated 8 American U.S. soldiers, including ripping one in half. So, well,
I'll tell you what, I think I participated in that too. It was a movie called Predator.
Ah, that's right. Great movie. Great movie.
I don't believe that story for 1 second.
Now, let me ask you this. One of the networks
whoever told that one, like I said, that's right. Somebody could write that, and Arnold and I could go back and do another sequel to Predator, except we'll change the alien to that thing.
Yes, exactly. That was the listener that was asking, and I just, like I said, I wanted to give you the background where it all came from.
You heard my answer. Come on.
Yeah, you did it. You killed it, or you almost came close.
No, it killed me.
It killed you because the governor, Schwarzenegger, good old Arnie, your buddy ended up killing him, and Carl Weathers was there. It was a great film, fantastic film. Now let's go back to, of course, the Marijuana Manifesto. So tell me, why did you literally write it so long after you were in politics?
I wrote it because marijuana gave me my quality of life back. Not me personally, but someone very close to me. started suffering a seizure disorder where the person was seizing 3 to 4, sometimes up to 3 to 4 times a week. And if you have to, I don't know what that's like. That's got to be pure hell. But taking care of a person that is seizing is also pure hell for the person taking care of them, because it's scary. You're caught. You don't know exactly what you can do when a person goes into seizures. And this person went on 4 different pharmaceutical medicines, one after the other, that doctors prescribed. None of them worked. They all had horrible side effects. We took the person to Colorado at the time. The person was able to go on what they call medical marijuana, 3 drops of liquid under the tongue 3 times a day. Now the person can get it in pill form in Minnesota, but the bad thing is what costs $30 a month in Colorado costs $600 a month in Minnesota.
Like Obamacare.
And that's, well, that aside, the person has been seizure-free now for over 2 years.
Well,
it was at that point 2 years ago I decided to write this book, because that convinced me completely that there are people suffering in the world and that our stupid government is allowing it to happen because they make money on keeping marijuana illegal.
Exactly, by throwing you over to Big Pharma and killing
you.
No,
it isn't even selling you over to Big Pharma. They do it through their seizure. The entire war on drugs is nothing but money making for the government with their seizure laws. They can seize your home. They can seize your car. I don't know how this passes the Constitution, but somehow they've warped it, and the judges are letting them by with it. And they can do all this without even you being convicted. It runs in the face of the way our laws are supposed to be. Our laws are supposed to be you are innocent until they prove you're guilty. What these seizure laws are is you're guilty until you prove you're innocent, because you have to get a lawyer and sue to get your stuff back.
I'm glad you brought up the Constitution, because I studied that intently, being a Juris Doctor, or that is the degree you get when you go to an ABA, an American Bar Association law school. So I see the Constitution being twisted, and every right that we have is literally going away slowly. But yet, let's just assume we get some judges in there that twist and turn the Second Amendment to take away our right to arms. What's going to happen? Do you really think criminals are buying AK-47s legally, or Uzis or Tech-9s? No, not one gun.
Well, first of all, you need to clear something up. Nobody can legally buy those weapons unless you're a licensed federal gun dealer.
That's what I'm saying.
The weapons that they call an assault rifle is still a single-shot weapon.
Yes, you buy.
It only shoots 1 bullet per every squeeze of the trigger. They are not machine guns. They may look like them, but they are not legal if they are. The only people who can own a machine gun is a federally licensed arms dealer.
Like not arms dealer, like my brother, Fed and former DIA, CIA, and FBI agents on here. But the point I'm saying is these gangsters on the streets are not firing SKSs or AR-15s. They're using the real deal. They're buying them from some drug runner that's building them in China and sending the AKs 47s here. The point is...
Again, let me interject. If they'd end the war on drugs, a lot of this would go away.
Correct.
Because my mother lived through the prohibition of alcohol, and she told me all prohibition does is make criminals rich and powerful.
That's right.
And that's what we're doing with the war on drugs. We're also militarizing our police forces, and we're creating this mental attitude because of the war on drugs of shoot first, ask questions later. And now it seems to be permeating through all the police departments, not just the drug people.
That's right. I saw a cool, really cool bumper sticker. It says, "The war on drugs is over. Drugs won." Anyhow, let's go to, because we're running out of time, let's go to the United Kingdom. Johnny, what do you got for us?
Well, we've got a question from James in Kingston, Surrey in England, and he asks, do you have, let's just read that, do you have any personal reasons for backing the cause, and do you smoke marijuana yourself, or do you just want to promote it to have people to have access to it?
Well, I have smoked it. I mean, I grew up in the 60s. I still remember July the 25th, 1970. That's the day I saw Jimi Hendrix live, and I still remember the exact date. So I grew up in the 60s where marijuana was very prominent at that time, and everybody probably smoked it that was at all out in the real world. And so, and to me, it's always been maligned because since I have had experience with it, I know that, and I've drank, I know that alcohol's way worse.
It is.
And I know that I used to chew tobacco, and so I know tobacco is way worse. So marijuana's the least dangerous of those three, and yet the other two you can use freely just about anywhere you want. Now, smoking is now restricted, of course, and the same thing would apply to marijuana. You wouldn't be able to smoke it in public because nobody deserves to have to inhale whatever it is you're smoking, the same as tobacco now. But as far as everything else goes, it should be treated the same. People have said to me, well, what do I do then if I catch my 13-year-old son with marijuana, if it's legal? I said, you do the same damn thing you should do. It's called parenting. Yes. And I said, you do the same thing you would do if you catch that child with alcohol at 13 or if you caught that child with tobacco at 13. Absolutely. No difference between the three of them.
None. And as a matter of fact, like you said, marijuana, cannabis, is the least harmful of them all. And I was trying to say earlier, one of our networks, the manager, lives in a state, the station is based in Indiana, where they don't have medical marijuana, but he knows the CBD helps his autistic son. So he was asking me if I can get him some CBD-only products. And so I did some research, and I found out, well, as long as it contains no THC and it's not flower, marijuana flower, I can get it to him. But by the time I got the news, he found out that you can buy CBD-only products in all 50 states, which I thought was fantastic. Here is another one from the United Kingdom before we run out of time. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's a personal question. I just wanted to know, because in England we've started to understand about cannabis resin and its possible cures for cancer or cancer remission. I just wondered, have you ever come across any of that in your own experience, or have you seen that for any witnessing or of this sign?
Well, yeah. In fact, in the introduction to the book, I talked about Steve Cubby, who had inoperable adrenal cancer and was given a 5-year death sentence. That was 35 years ago. And doctors have attributed cannabis has kept him alive. And it's being studied in Israel. There's a doctor over there that knows all about it. It's financed by the U.S., so don't buy into it when they say we need more studies. We don't. Now, is it a cure for cancer? Not necessarily fully, but it is it's curing some cancer. And plus, what it does for cancer people, here's probably one of the most important things it does. Most cancer people, when they're getting chemotherapy, cannot eat. They throw it up. They throw up. They can't eat. Well, if they smoke marijuana before, then they're able to eat. And that's simply common sense. How is your body going to fight anything if you're not getting proper nutrition?
Absolutely. And that's the big problem with what is going on, especially here in the United States and even other countries that the United States has full control over. Saying you want money, you want aid, well, abide by these laws. Otherwise,
well, I'm hoping Canada is going. I've done a lot of Canadian radio this week, and I've challenged the Canadians to stand up for themselves, come out from behind the United States shadow, because allegedly they're going to vote for full legalization next year. And I don't know how it's going to go. It looks like it's going to pass. I hope it does. And Mexico's talked about it too. My friend President Fox, the former president of Mexico, he's for legalization. He did it. He said it so eloquently and simply. He goes, "I'm a rancher farmer. I want to be able to grow it."
That's right. That's right.
and
you
know,
should.
How can you put it any better than President Fox put it?
And George Washington grew it for Lord's sake.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know?
Let me finish with that. Like I said on the get-go, Washington and Jefferson today would be drug dealers locked up in prison doing 10 to 12 years. Now, what's wrong with that picture? And I'll give you a final thing to think about. The Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and Betsy Ross's original American flag are all made out of marijuana.
That's right. That's right. The original American flag that is very popular is made from hemp, everybody. So people who think it demonizes people and is the gateway drug. That's what I wanted to talk to you about.
The original... Sorry there, Jesse. The original reason that it was banned in England was because the Navy claimed all rights to hemp for their ropes, and it's been in place ever since.
Yep. Well, in fact, England then made the colonies grow it for them because England's only about the size of the state of New York, and the colonies had all this area, so they actually made the colonies grow hemp for their Navy. And we were ordered to do it, and you could actually barter with the British. You could pay them hemp in lieu of money. It was the economic backbone of the United States for 160 years. We're not taught that in our history books. The only thing that replaced it was cotton when they invented the cotton gin.
That's right. That's right. You're absolutely right, and it's pathetic. And then we have the oil rush where you can create some sort of
a fun thing to think about, the great Willie Nelson, the singer?
Absolutely.
Well, Willie not only smokes it, he powers his buses with biodiesel fuel made from hemp marijuana.
From hemp. Yes. We
so
heard
Willie,
this.
I'd like to be behind that bus.
Like I said, Willie not only smokes it, he gets to all the concerts. And who is he? Him, Louis B. Armstrong, the great Satchmo, admitted he smoked every time before he played. What the hell is wrong with that?
It's literally hypocrisy that we have in our country. Let me ask you this because we're running out of time.
Yep.
A lot of people that I have polled really admit that the gateway drug to trying other harmful drugs was not marijuana at all. It was cigarettes, smoking cigarettes. That's what led them to everything else. But yet...
No, absolutely correct. I remember as a kid, the first gateway drug we tried was cigarettes. Somebody'd forge a note, you'd go up to the local store and you'd get a pack of Marlboros. And then you'd run out in the alley, pass them around, and everyone smoked cigarettes. Second gateway drug was alcohol.
That's
Marijuana was probably third.
Now, in your book, you show that if we legalize marijuana nationwide, we will have created millions of jobs, stimulate the economy, and so on.
Well, look at it this way. How many people work in the tobacco industry? Hundreds of thousands, right?
That's right.
How many people work in the alcohol industry? Millions.
Well, worldwide.
You'd have the same amount of people working in the marijuana industry. It's jobs waiting to happen. And let me finish by stating this to all the religious people out there, the people that believe in God. Well, if you believe in God, then that means God made marijuana. What right does man have to destroy something God made?
Correct. Absolutely correct and very, very well said. Governor Ventura, it's been a pleasure. We have to do this again.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it very much.
Everybody out there, remember, we have the Books and Videos tab right on our website, drjradiolive.com. Click on it, then scroll your name down to Jesse Ventura, and it'll take you to his author's page on Amazon with all our guests. And remember, Dr. J Radio Live is the same name for every single social media outlet you can find. We also want to thank our networks that carry us. We have PSN, as well as Late Night in the Midlands in the U.S., plus Coast to Coast PM radio network, and in the United Kingdom, Deprogrammed Radio Network carries our show, which is incredible. Not to mention the 27 terrestrial stations right here in America that are listening to this. Of course, you also have iTunes, Shoutcast, TuneIn.com. It's all there. With that being said, check out Governor Ventura's book and everything, all his research. It's really a fantastic book. I got a copy of it, and it's really, really amazing. This is a book that belongs in every senator's hands and congressman's hands. And POTUS, if you guys want change, you have to participate. You cannot sit passively. Just like Governor Ventura stated earlier, if you want change, you have to make it happen. You be active. And that's all we say. As I always end the show, remember, disclosure is in your hands. Whatever skill set you have or connection you have to people, use that. And then, of course, go out and broadcast and do what you can to get everybody out there broadcasting this or sharing the information. With that being said, this is Dr. J with my team of Dr. J Radio Live.